Did you know we moved into 2024 now, which means I now have the right to do another Linux distro tier list because, yeah, I'm limiting myself to one of these per year. And since the last one, I tried a lot of other distributions, either in a video on the channel or in my own time, and the distros I ranked last time have also evolved. So let's see how I would rank everything at the beginning of 2024, and what I would personally use and what I would pass on. But what I wouldn't pass on is this segue to our sponsor. This video is sponsored by SquareX, and if you like to browse the web privately and securely, you really should give them a shot. SquareX can be installed as a browser extension for Chromium-based browsers, and it also has a web app for any other browser, and it will give you access to a suite of disposable tools that open everything in the cloud instead of locally, so your system and your data are never at risk. With SquareX, you get a burner browser that will block ads and trackers and give you access to any geographical location you'd like, or even multiple different locations in different tabs. And everything is simply deleted when you close the window, sort of like a VPN plus tracker blocker plus incognito mode combo in one click. SquareX also will give you a disposable file viewer that lets you open files and view documents from senders you don't trust just yet, without risking your system. Nothing you open in there can access your real physical computer. And you also get a disposable email address that you can use to create accounts and subscribe to various newsletters without giving away your real address and identity. And apart from this, they have other security smart integrations that you get out of the box to make you safer online. So click the link in the description and give SquareX a shot. It's an excellent tool to make sure that your browsing stays safe and private. So obviously it is all subjective, and I decided to rank all of these distributions in terms of how likely I would be to use them for my own use case, which is content production and running a business. And everyone will have different criteria, so don't get offended if I ranked your distro lower than what you would have, and don't hesitate to let me know in the comments if you would have ranked it higher and why. So we'll have the following categories. We'll have great, as in I could absolutely recommend this with my eyes closed. We'll have good, which is I would use that distro. We'll have average, which is it's good but it's not for me. We'll have no thanks, as in I would not run that. And we have hell no, as in I'm not touching that ever. So let's start with the big one, Ubuntu. I feel it has progressed a lot since last time. The Ubuntu team has a renewed focus on improving their implementation of GNOME, with plenty of patches to improve performance and newer additions in the form of extensions, like a tiling assistant. You know it is going to work reliably, it has tons of help online, and if an app exists on Linux, it has an Ubuntu package. But their insistence on pushing snap packages for desktop applications really irritates me, because I feel Flatpak would be a far superior solution. And also I'm not a big fan of how Canonical treats various open source projects recently, so I'm only putting this one in average. It's like last time, it's not incredible, and to use it I would have to remove Snap and reinstall some stuff, so it's not great, it's just decent. And I would place all its derivatives at the same spot because they suffer from the same problem. Linux Mint, though, I feel still deserves its place in the great category. Not only does it provide the most complete graphical experience out of the box with utilities for everything, but they also fixed most of my annoyances with it, as in they have started work on Wayland support to future-proof their distro, and their first draft of a Wayland session is actually not bad at all. And they now have an Edge ISO with a newer kernel, so you can actually install it on recent hardware. So it is definitely still a great Linux distro, recommended for any beginner or even for advanced users. The only reason I'm not using Linux Mint as a daily driver is because I'm not a huge fan of the Cinnamon desktop for myself. Now Zorin OS is going to move up to the average category. It's not a bad distro, it looks good, it has plenty of improvements and layouts for GNOME, but for a desktop distro, it is still moving way too slow. Zorin OS 17 just came out, and it's based on Ubuntu 22.04, which is going to be replaced in a few months by a new LTS. It's not a terrible choice, but with their current release schedule, you will get something that is half recent in 2025, and that's just not acceptable for a desktop in my opinion. It is not as much of a problem as it once was, because with Flatpak you can basically get recent applications even if your base is pretty old, but the desktop they use is old and I just could not see myself sticking with that for 2 years. elementarYOS will unfortunately stay in the no thanks category for now as well. I love the distro, I love their desktop, but I just cannot use it nowadays. It's updated way too slowly, and elementarYOS 8 will bring some cool stuff. They'll finish the transition to GTK4, they'll bring a Wayland session, so it will move into the modern Linux era, but it just doesn't offer enough for me anymore today. It's not a bad distro, but as it stands right now with elementarYOS 7, it is just not for me. Now, Fedora is a distro I used for a long while as a daily driver, until very recently, and this distro I'll place in the great category. It is very stable, it is updated often, it is pushing the new Linux desktop stack with Portals, Wayland, Pipewire and Flatpak, and it's the embodiment of everything I enjoy about Linux. Constant improvements and innovation and risk-taking that pays off. And sure, it's a Red Hat thing, and Red Hat is not my favorite company right now, but as a distribution, it's one I could recommend to everyone, especially if you want to move into the present or the future of Linux. They're not afraid to drop all the things to help everyone progress, and I love that. As per Debian, I only ever used the stable version, and I will put it in average for my use case. Debian 12 was released relatively recently, and so it is not utterly outdated yet, but it will be utterly outdated by the time Debian 13 gets updated. The desktop it uses, the apps in the repos, they will all be terribly old. And for apps, it's not as much of a problem, because obviously now you have Flatpak that can solve the problem, but for the desktop you use, it's just not for me. I like my stuff to get updates when the new desktops comes out, and Debian just doesn't give me that. Maybe the unstable version would be worth a shot to see if it changes my opinion. Still, Debian offers a solid experience, it's easy to use, there's plenty of documentation, and they now have proprietary firmware ready to be installed if you need it. So it's a solid distro no matter the use case. Now, OpenSUSE Tumbleweed is next, and I will put this one in the good category. It's a really good rolling release, and while my experience with SUSE is limited, they do have some really good admin tools to configure a bunch of things that other distros simply do not have a graphical user interface for. And in my testing, it was rock solid as far as rolling releases go. I could definitely see myself using it. As per OpenSUSE Leap, I'll put it in average. It's virtually the same experience as with Tumbleweed in terms of the benefits of using OpenSUSE, but it's just not interesting to me as a distribution. It's a bit too slow moving, it's a bit too enterprise focused for my own tastes. And the current way this distro works will be changed soon, with the future of Leap lying with ALP, making it an image-based operating system. So it is not bad, not at all, but I just don't find it interesting or suitable for my needs. Now, the good old Arch Linux will go in average for me, because I would personally not use it on my computer. But it's not because it's a bad distro, it's because it's not for me. All my experiences with Arch and Arch-based distros were cut short by issues after updating my computer, and I cannot deal with that on a daily basis. I need a system where I can just click the update button with my eyes closed, reboot, and expect everything to work when the computer comes back alive, without having to read update notes or look over various install scripts to check if they are safe or not, and Arch just does not provide that experience for me. And I understand why people love and use Arch and a bunch of its derivatives, and if you have the time to invest in making sure it's solid, it can be very stable. But for me, it's just not cutting it. And speaking of Arch derivatives, Manjaro I will place in the no thanks category again this year. The way it is built just doesn't make sense to me. You're getting access to the AUR, but since you're also not using the latest Arch packages, you will have issues with that, as there will be mismatches between libraries and package versions. And if you don't use the AUR on it, you're left with a rolling release that takes bad decisions, like shipping unstable versions of apps that developers don't want them to ship yet, and not testing updates that come from Arch adequately, like the Grub incident. I feel there are better rolling releases to use, like Tumbleweed for example. So yeah, it's just not for me, it's too unstable. Now, Tuxedo OS is the distro I use these days, and I will place it in good. It's a semi-rolling release, meaning you don't get major updates every 6 months like what Ubuntu does, but you're getting regular updates to the kernel, to the drivers and the apps, plus a rolling release model for the KDE Plasma desktop. It has been super stable for me. It's the best KDE distribution I have ever used, and while it is based on Ubuntu 22.04, since you're getting updates to the critical hardware support components, it's not really an issue. And the tools Tuxedo adds, like their control center, are also really good on a Tuxedo laptop, so I love using it. And the only reason why it's not in the great category is they're still basing themselves on Ubuntu LTS, and yes, they do update the hardware support components like drivers and the kernel, but the packages in the repos are pretty damn old. It's not been a big issue for me, but it could be, so I'll wait to see how fast they will rebase on 24.04 before placing this one in the great category. Now, as per Pop! OS, it will be in the no thanks category for me this year. It is not a bad distro, it's pretty much the same behavior as Tuxedo OS. You get updates to the drivers and the kernel, but the desktop they ship is just completely outdated. It's based on a very old GNOME version with a bunch of extensions, and the experience has not changed in 2 years, and that's just not acceptable for me. And I would expect that to change by the time 24.04 releases for Pop! OS, which is going to be apparently in the summer with the brand new, rewritten from scratch Cosmic desktop. But for now, installing 22.04 on my desktop or on my laptop would be a big regression in terms of workflow and performance and features. Now, Solus is a distro I expected to not even mention in that tier list, since it was pretty much dead last year. But since then, it apparently revived, and it looks like they have plans. Now, it is still going to go in hell no for me, because I cannot tell if this is a temporary revival or if it is here to stay. I need more time to see if they will repeat the mistakes of the past, and since they also want to completely change how the distro is built and works for Solus 5, I cannot place any long-term trust in them for now. When I install something, I like it to last for a year or two, and Solus just does not give me the confidence I need to reliably have that experience. So it's in hell no for me. Now, Gentoo I will put in no thanks for my own use case. Again, I understand why people want to use it, but personally I do not find it a compelling proposition at all. I don't want to compile any of my programs to gain 1 to 3% performance, and using the binary packages on Gentoo, why? Just use any other distro that has binary packages. So if you love Gentoo, that's cool, but the very concept is simply just not working for me at all. Now, KDE Neon will go in average. I like the rolling release model for the desktop and the rebasing on a new LTS when it's available. But also it hasn't been extremely stable the last time I tried it, and I feel that nowadays Tuxedo OS does the same job, but much better, so I just wouldn't use Neon personally. Now, Asahi Linux and Fedora Asahi are in a weird spot here. I cannot use any of these myself, but it's not because they're bad, it's because it runs on hardware I don't like. My MacBook Pro M1 will be sold soon, it's way too heavy and it lacks useful ports. And it is ARM, so there is no DaVinci Resolve on that, meaning that I can just not use these distros. But Asahi as a distro is awesome and almost feature complete, so I will put it in average because placing it lower would not really be justified. Now let's talk about NixOS. And this one will make some people grit their teeth, but it's only going in average for me, meaning I could see myself using it, but currently I don't see the point. Having a reproducible system is great, and I loved learning the syntax to configure the system. But some things were just annoying to get to work, like DaVinci Resolve, which the studio version I could never run, or NVIDIA drivers. And for my use case, there is no point, really. I don't reinstall often enough that I need a config file that would recreate my own system. And other distros are stable enough that I don't feel like I need to use something like Nix. It is a really good distro, and I loved experimenting with it, but I just don't see the point for my own use case personally. Now, HoloISO is a weird one because you don't use it for desktop use, it's for gaming related stuff. And for that specific use case, I will place it in Great. I have recently reinstalled it on my own console, which is basically just a tower PC from Tuxedo, and this time I had nothing to configure or change. It just installed and worked perfectly right at the bat. So for my gaming needs, it's basically the Steam Deck experience on a big TV with good hardware and performance, and for that, it's wonderful. Now for more mixed gaming and desktop usage, I would place Nobara in Good. It's a solid improvement over Fedora. It actually delivers better performance, the suite of tools that are pre-installed is great. The only thing I don't quite like is that it's a smaller project, and as such, I would be wary of running it as a daily driver, because it's not seeing a ton of external contributions, and I am not sure I would find enough help online if I needed it. Now for Vanilla OS, I would place that in no thanks for my own use case. I like the concept of running distros in containers to get access to any package or app you want, but also I don't need that. I can already run any app on any distros these days, and it's more meant for development purposes, and that is not my use case, so I would not run Vanilla OS as my main operating system. Now for fun, I will include ChromeOS Flex, because it's basically a regular Linux distro these days with a proprietary desktop. And I will place it in hell no, because, well, it completely sucks. It lacks the most basic of features, the desktop is bare bones and performs badly, and installing anything that is not a web app requires you to use what is basically a VM, so performance is really bad. It is a bad operating system, a bad desktop, there's proprietary stuff all around, and it's also privacy invasive, so hell no for ChromeOS Flex. And as per Deepin, it's still going in hell no as well, because it has telemetry baked in, it's using a very old Debian base, and the desktop might look nice, but all of its apps are super limited. And installing anything else on top of that just breaks the unified look and feel. I would never use that distro, but if you like the desktop, the Deepin desktop, I would recommend maybe using it on another distro, because it can look really good. So that's it for all the distros I have used on my own time or on the channel, and how I would rank them for my own use case. Obviously yours might be different, so let me know where you would have placed all those distributions yourself using the same ranking system. And in the meantime, I will let you know about our sponsor. It's Tuxedo Computers. If you need a new device to run Linux on, you should probably stop buying devices from big name manufacturers that only support Windows natively and trying to install Linux on that and fighting the various hardware that is not well supported. You should buy something that supports Linux natively, and that's Tuxedo Computers. They have laptops, desktops, and NUCs at all form factors, all performance levels, all price points. All the hardware is very customizable, and it is picked specifically because it works well with Linux. And if it didn't, in their testing, they actually submit patches upstream to fix those issues for everyone. You can customize the keyboard layout, you can have your own logo on the lid of your laptop, you can open the laptop, repair it, and upgrade it. These are really good. It's all I use these days. I run this channel on a Tuxedo Infinity Book Pro 16, and all my gaming is done on a Tuxedo Cube, which is just a PC I installed HoloISO on. So, if you want a new computer, you want to run Linux on it, and you want to support Linux's development, click the link in the description below and get yourself a computer from Tuxedo. I can only recommend them. So thanks everyone for watching the tier list. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't hesitate to like, to subscribe, to turn on notifications, and to write a comment. And if you didn't like the video, well, you can always click the dislike button and let me know why in the comments. It's probably because I rated Arch not in the great category, probably. So, and also, if you really like the channel, there are plenty of ways to support it in the description below. Just check out any of those links and you'll get access to some cool stuff. So, thanks for watching, and I guess you'll see me in the next one. Bye!